And good morning, Pastor Jacobson here with another devotion for your day. Well, it is incredibly cold outside as of right now. I think my outdoor thermometer was saying air temperature of like negative 12 or 15 or something when I woke up this morning. So it's cold and it's, of course, windy, but that's always normal out here. So, hope everybody's staying warm. Hope everybody's going to be able to stay indoors for most of the day today. But today we are going to pick back up where we left off in John chapter 12. We left off at verse 34 last time. So we're going to finish out this chapter, talk a little bit about this contrast of light and darkness and Jesus hiding himself. There's a little liturgical note that we can make right here, and we'll go from there. So grab your favorite beverage and Bible, and let's get started. Good morning, Joanne. So, as I said, John chapter 12, we're going to start here at verse 34. Pay attention in particular to how Jesus addresses this theme of light and darkness and then his actions that go with it. And then we'll kind of get into that as we discuss this. So let's start here at verse 34. Then the crowd replied to Jesus, "We have heard from the law that the Christ remains forever. And how do you say the Son of Man must be lifted up? Who is the Son of Man?" So Jesus said to them, "Yet a little time the light is with you. Walk while you have the light, so that the darkness does not overtake you. And the one who walks in darkness does not know where he is going. While you have the light, believe in the light, in order that you may become sons of the light." Jesus said these things, and then he went away and was hidden from them. But as many signs as he had performed before them, they did not believe in him. In order that the word of the prophet Isaiah would be fulfilled, who said, "Lord, who has believed our message? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed?" For this reason, they were not able to believe, because Isaiah said, "He has blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts, lest they see with their eyes and understand with their hearts and turn, and I heal them." Isaiah said these things because he saw his glory, and he spoke about him. Yet despite that, even many of the rulers believed in him. Because of the Pharisees, they did not confess it, so that they would not be expelled from the synagogue. For they loved the praise of men more than the praise of God. But Jesus cried out and said, "The one who believes in me does not believe in me, but in the one who sent me. And the one who sees me sees the one who sent me. I have come as a light into the world in order that everyone who believes in me will not remain in the darkness. And if anyone hears my words and does not observe them, I will not judge him, for I have not come to judge the world, but to save the world. The one who rejects me and does not accept my words has one who judges him. The word that I have spoken will judge him on the last day. For I have not spoken from myself, but the Father himself who sent me has commanded me what I should say and what I should speak. And I know that his commandment is eternal life. So the things that I say, just as the Father said to me, thus I say." Good morning, Sarah, Marcia, Connie. Great to see everyone. So let's kind of take this up here from the top, from verse 34 again. Now, notice the crowds had the same struggles that the prophets long ago had. Isaiah, you can see it in Ezekiel. You definitely see it in Jeremiah. I'm sure in some of the minor prophets in varying degrees, you see it. You see this contrast with their words, where on the one hand, they'll be talking about the king that remains forever. Jesus, the Messiah to come, will be the one who reigns on the throne for David forever and ever and ever. At the same time, you also hear a contrast of, say, in Isaiah, a struggle with Isaiah 53, which we'll get into in just a little while here, where he is esteemed not. We didn't behold him. He had no form or beauty that we would come to him. He was stricken, smitten, and afflicted, and he was crushed for our transgression. So you have these, I guess, odd dichotomies that they're trying to understand the grace of God and how also the king will remain forever. First Peter actually mentions this. Peter writes in First Peter chapter 1, verse 10 and following, concerning this salvation, the prophets who prophesied about the grace meant for you sought and made careful inquiry. So in other words, they were seeking and trying to inquire into this very carefully for your sake. Investigating for what person or which time the Spirit of Christ in them was indicating when he testified beforehand to the sufferings with reverence to Christ and the glories after these things. We're trying to figure out what this suffering and glory and all of these things meant. It seemed like two completely opposed things. So, do we at times feel a little bit confused like the crowds? Well, you're in good company. Even the prophets were confused at times. And so the people are definitely confused. On the one hand, the Pharisees are completely stuck on the Messiah remaining forever. They are stuck on this worldly kingdom, New Jerusalem. Everything will go back to the way it was, say, in King David's time. It's interesting, though, like they'll think of Moses, they'll think of David, they'll think of Abraham. And yet each one of those individuals was sinful, was fallen, did things that led to a worse situation for the Hebrew people than they were before. And so they want to go back to those days. There's a nostalgia for something they've never been there. And yet they can't realize that, oops, all those things fell apart too in the end. So you got that on the one hand. And on the other hand, you have people that are looking for grace and mercy in the midst of their daily life. If they're trying to figure out how can we enter to the kingdom of heaven, that was kind of behind Nicodemus approaching Jesus in chapter 3. And Jesus flat out tells them, even though Nicodemus doesn't ask the question, right? Good morning, Aaron. And all these things. So Nicodemus kind of gets it in the beginning. The Pharisees, they get the king part of it, but they don't get the Messiah and mercy part of it. And there's confusion that abounds. So then Jesus launches into this light and darkness theme again. And again, this is a theme that I told you from the very beginning in the Gospel of John we need to pay attention to because it's going to be woven in and out all different places here. And so Jesus says, hey, look, you have the light for just a little while. This is your time, guys. This is time for Israel to make a choice here. Israel does have a choice. They can continue to try to do things the way of the kingdoms of this world. They can continue to look for a David, a Solomon, a Moses, any of the great patriarchs. They could look for that type of person, or they could look for the Messiah who is able to do something far greater for their nation. That if they would continue to actually read the prophets time and time again, they make mention that even the Goyim are going to be brought in to the kingdom. So even the foreigners, the nations, the others, the outside people are going to be brought in. And so Israel has the choice to make. The light's right here, guys, and I'm speaking words of truth. And it goes back to, and you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and mention our devotional thought for today. Nicodemus, when he first approached Jesus, all those chapters ago, all right, chapter 3, said, Jesus, our rabbi, we know that you are a teacher that has come from God, for no one is able to do the works that you do unless God is with him. Well, They've seen far greater works than anything from Nicodemus's time to this time. They've even seen Lazarus rise from the dead. And they can't now claim, for some reason, they can't now claim that God is with him. So there's a weird dichotomy that's happening where at first they said, these are great works. God must be with this person. Well, no, can't be, because now he's talking about dying. And let's not forget that the Jews actually knew what Jesus meant. Jesus saying, when I am lifted up, will draw all people to myself. Those were not ambiguous words. They understood this to mean Jesus' crucifixion. That's why here, all the way in 34, they say, how do you now say the Son of Man must be lifted up? They understand what that means. So what in the end, that you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have Jesus and the Pharisees. It's either one or the other. The people are either going to live by works of the law, or they're going to live by Jesus' grace and mercy under his kingdom. You can't have both. People try a lot of times, and even in the Christian church today, to try to walk this line that somehow I have Jesus and mercy and grace, but I really need to make sure I get all my ducks in a row over here. And once they're in a row over here, well, then we're good. Okay, we're good. Now, this is not an excuse to sin. This is not an excuse to be a license for sin. There's Romans 6, for example. But at the same time, what a lot of times people do is they try to put themselves back under the law, even though they've been freed from it. And we do it in goofy ways, and we've done it in goofy ways through history, especially fairly modern history in the grand scheme of the 2,000 years of the church. People will make goofy rules. Somebody has to be baptized in a river or in a body of water, a lake of some sort, because Jesus was baptized in a river. And so people will try to make rules like this. The type of water is nowhere prescribed there, nor even the quantity of it. We know that there were times when people were baptized in rivers, and sometimes even fairly shallow ones. The Jordan's not all that deep most of the times of the year. During the flood season, it's a little different. Good morning, Marlene. But people make these weird things. Well, if I just do this ceremony the right way, well, then I get Jesus' grace and mercy. If I just carry out the law the right, so people do this weird thing of putting themselves back under the law. One of the ones that I've seen, and this one flares up every couple of years or so, you'll see it on the interwebs, is circumcision again. And again, Galatians 3, Paul makes it clear, if you put yourself back under the law, you better keep the whole thing. So good luck with that. So just pay attention here. Jesus is saying you got the light. You have the mercy and grace right here. Your choice is yours. And then what does Jesus do? He goes and hides himself. He gives them time to consider this. So Jesus goes away and is hidden for a time before his passion. He's going to prepare during this time. So, as I said, Israel now has a choice to make, and we're going to see this choice start to unfold as we get up to Good Friday, Jesus' trial and crucifixion. The crowds are clearly starting to come over to Jesus' side. We saw them as Jesus entered into Jerusalem. Everybody was coming out and singing Hosanna, Psalm 118. They were laying out palm branches and cloaks before him. Even Greek people were seeking him. It seems like the vast majority of people were all about Jesus, whether they understood everything or not. Now, real quick, there's a liturgical note that we need to go back real fast to John 8, kind of, but also we can focus in on here. So historically, in the Lutheran Church, I believe this also goes for the Roman Catholic Church because I think they have the same reading we do. On the one-year lectionary, the lectionary used before the current papal lectionary that we ended up with in the Lutheran Church, the historic one-year lectionary on the fifth Sunday of Lent, John 8 would be read, and at the very end, Jesus hides himself. The people are going to pick up stones to throw at Jesus, and Jesus hides himself. And so just a quick liturgical note, traditionally on that Sunday, pastor would come out, and he'd usually have some sort of black cloth or something, and he would cover the cross. And this idea of Jesus hiding, Jesus hidden, Jesus, the light of the world drawing back. And there was an idea here that as you get ready to go to Palm Sunday, the next Sunday after Lent 5, as you get ready to go to that, you're thinking about this choice. Jesus has claimed to be the light of the world, and now I'm having some time to reflect on that and think about it. This does, or could, I should say, could continue to happen in the 3-year lectionary that we currently use, probably on Palm Sunday would be my guess. John chapter 12 is a reading from that point. It's usually focused in on the triumphal entry or the Greeks here, but this could be something that would be resurrected. The idea is you get a physical act that happens in the service that gives everybody a chance to pause and think, what do I think about Jesus? Okay, so just pay attention. Some churches you go to, if they're using that 1-year lectionary, you may actually see this on a Lent 5 service. That's what's going on there. So it's tied to these verses like this. So as I said, we'll talk a little bit about Isaiah 53 and 6 because Jesus quotes it to them. So, or actually, John, not Jesus quoting it. It's John quoting it about what's going on. John clearly understands that the Jews have this problem historically, that God will send a prophet and he will talk about his grace and mercy and what he wants from the people. And the people choose to do the exact opposite or the weirdest thing you've ever seen on the other end of the spectrum. And so he quotes Isaiah 53, verse 1. I think he wants us to consider the rest of Isaiah 53, but verse 1 is just to get our thoughts moving. Lord, who has believed our message? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? So it's interesting that Isaiah puts it this way because it almost sounds like there's more than one. It's Isaiah and the Lord speaking. Isaiah says, this is my message from the Lord. So who is our message here? But I think this is when he says our message, I think we can think about all the prophets who have borne this message throughout the centuries leading up to Jesus. They haven't believed. They've chosen to believe the ways of the world because it's so much easier, people think. And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? We want the arm of the Lord to be military power and might, to be number one, and everybody look at us. And yet, the arm of the Lord comes as a man from Nazareth that claims to be the Son of God, has the signs and miracles that go along with it, and goes to the cross to die for the sins of the people. That's where God's power is seen. Hey, good morning, Chrissy. So anyway, going back into Isaiah 53, and then it continues. So who has the arm of the Lord been revealed? And then it continues on. He was stricken and smitten for our affliction. He was crushed for our iniquity. He bears the sin of the people on his shoulders. All of these phrases that go through Isaiah 53, they should have understood that it was about Jesus. An interesting thing, I've seen it a few times where people have done it, usually YouTube videos, where people will take Isaiah 53, especially the first, 15 verses or so there, and will go read them to somebody and say, who do you think this was about? And almost everybody will say, well, Jesus. Even if they have no idea that it came from the Bible, they'll just say, well, that has to be about Jesus. The Jews that they read this to say, oh, that has to be about Jesus. Okay, so where is this written? They'll ask next. And people say, oh, one of the Gospels, New Testament, a monk wrote it, some weird things like that. And then they reveal that this was written hundreds of years before Jesus in Isaiah 53. And then people kind of get interested. Some people get angry, actually, especially the Jews that are questioned about this, because it should be so obvious from the Old Testament that this was God's plan. And yet the people, even in Jesus' day, are closing their eyes to it. And then we get Isaiah 6, verse 1 and verse 40. He has blinded their eyes. They're so interested more in God's power here on earth, keeping their earthly goods and wealth and all these things, that they can't see that God has an even greater purpose in mind for them. So this gets into what we've talked about, the theology of glory versus the theology of the cross. Glory versus the cross. Man loves glory. They want a theology where God gives really good things, really powerful signs and wonders all the time, churches are growing. There's more people coming to church all the time. The church never suffers. Or you could take this back, Old Testament language. The synagogue's not suffering. Everybody's growing. We're number one. Everybody's looking to us. And man, we chase that. We want bigger and better spectacle. We want more people paying attention to what's going on. Sometimes we have good motives behind that. Sometimes, let's be honest, we don't have the best of motives. Sometimes it's, well, maybe I can get a bigger paycheck for somebody, or maybe